I'm going to teach you in a very simplistic manner how to create a very simple progress board that is going to allow you to drag and drop items in multiple containers, probably indicating the stage at which a task might be at. This board is commonly known as the Kanban board, and it is popularly used to manage projects or for project management or project development. It is popularly used in Jira, which is a software development project management software. We're going to be using a package that is known as React-beautiful-dnd in order to create this type of Kanban board or progress board. React-beautiful-dnd is a popular React library that enables drag and drop functionality in web applications. It allows users to drag items within a container and drop them in another container, which can be useful for tasks like reordering lists or moving items between particular categories. React-beautiful-dnd is a powerful and flexible library that can help you build more interactive and engaging applications. It has a large and active community of developers, which means that there are many resources available for learning and troubleshooting issues. But before we get our hands dirty, let us try and understand React-beautiful-dnd simple API architecture. The API is comprised of 3 components, and all these components form a part of React-beautiful-dnd's package, which allows you to implement drag and drop functionality in your React applications. This component includes the drag-drop context, the droppable component, and the draggable component. The drag-drop context component is the top-level component that provides the context for drag and drop interactions. You'll need to wrap your entire application with this component to enable drag and drop functionality. The droppable component is used to define a draggable area within your application. You think of it as a container that can receive draggable items. You can create as many droppable components as you need within your application, and each one will have a unique droppable ID that you can use to identify it. And then finally, you have the draggable component, which is used to define an individual draggable item within your application. Each draggable component should be a child of droppable component and will have a unique draggable ID that you can use to identify it. So the drag-drop context component provides the overall context for drag and drop interactions. The droppable component defines an area that you can receive draggable items, and the draggable component defines the individual draggable items within that area. In order to make these components work together, you'll need to follow a specific hierarchy. You'll need to wrap your entire application with the drag-drop component, then wrap your droppable components around the areas where you want to allow drag and drop interactions. And then finally, you would want to wrap your draggable components around the individual items that you want to make draggable. To enable drag and drop functionality, you'll also need to define a specific function called OnDragEnd that will be called when drag and drop interaction is complete. We will learn about more of these functions as we continue, but in summary, drag, drop context, droppable, and draggable components are all important components in the React-beautiful-dnd package that allow you to implement drag and drop functionality in your React application. By using these components together and defining an onDrag function, you can create a powerful and intuitive user interface that allows you to drag and drop items within your application. So now let's get our hands dirty. First, we're going to need a simple React project that we can start off with. I've created this boilerplate code over here with Vite. So I'm going to create a couple of components inside. I'm wondering if I should create a folder called components over here. And inside this component, I'm going to have 3 components inside of here. First, I'm going to have the task. This is going to be our draggable component. And inside of here, I'm also going to have the column component, which is going to be my droppable component. And then I'm going to have my Kanban board, which is going to be my drag-drop context. And just like that, we have a solid foundation for our project. But first, of course, we need to be able to import or install those packages. So we need to say npm install React-beautiful-dnd, And then we need to install Ent Design because I want to use some avatars in there. And then finally, I'm going to install Styled Component. If you're not familiar with Styled Component, just write it over here, Styled Component is a popular CSS in JavaScript library that allows you to write CSS code directly inside your React components using JavaScript syntax. It is designed to make it easier to create and manage styles in React application by providing a simple and intuitive way to define reusable, composable styles that are scoped to specific individual components. So with Styled Component, you can create styled versions of standard HTML elements, as is the case over here. This is a styled version of the div element in HTML. Or you can create literally your own custom components. You can define styles using template literals that look like regular CSS code, but are actually interpreted as JavaScript code by the Styled Components library. So this essentially allows you to use dynamic props, variables, and functions in your styles, which can be useful for creating responsive layouts or theming your applications. So we're going to use Styled Components in our project. And now let's run our project. There we go. Of course, we have to open our project as well. All right, there's our code and there's our project. Okay, just a little bit of a ground rule. Let's just go to inside src and go to the main file. And what I want you to do is just to remove this strict mode, only because React-beautiful-dnd has a tendency of clashing with strict mode. So I'm guessing maybe you can continue with the project, and maybe if you encounter that error, then you might as well remove that strict mode. But I've worked with it and it has that tendency of clashing with strict mode. So yeah. All right, so let's get into our main files. Let's get rid of this one. So we're going to start first with our task. That is the unit. You know what? Instead, maybe we can start with the Kanban board instead, so that we can create the context of our application. So yeah, let's get into our Kanban board, RFC, to create that. Then we're going to need to import a couple of packages at the very top, which is our 3 components. But I think in this context, we're not actually going to need these other 2 components. We're just going to need the drag and drop context, and that's all we're going to need. And inside of here, I wanted to create 2 state variables, 2 state constants, and this is where we're gonna have 2 stages inside of our Kanban board. We're going to have the to-do stage and the done stage. So these states are going to have all of the tasks that have been completed and all the tasks that have not been completed. So our Kanban board is just essentially going to have 2 columns, right? Okay, so and then we're just going to go down and we're going to create our context. Remember that each and every, it's very important that we have this drag and drop context. It enables us to actually execute that drag and drop functionality. So I'm just going to say drag and drop context like this. And at the very top, I'm going to put a heading. I'm going to call this the progress board. And then inside of here, this is where I'm going to have all my draggables and my droppables. So I'm just going to create a div for that. And inside of that div, I'm going to give it a couple of styles. I'm going to make sure that it is dead on the center. Let's make sure we style that accordingly. Alright, so we're going to make sure everything is just dead on the center. And inside of here, inside of this div, this is where we're going to put our columns. Yeah, so I think this is fine. This is good. We've created that. And now what we need to do is we need to create our column. Let's go back to our column, RFC. The shortcut is very important. And now what we need to do is we need to import Droppable at the very top, because that's the one that we're going to use. And we're also going to be using styled components, by the way. So we're going to have to import that as well. There you go, styled components. And yeah, I think that's about it. And what we want to do, we want to use styled components in order to create the container for the column. So this is how we would essentially do it. So this container here would represent our column. But I also want to style the title, because if you look into, let me just show you what we want to achieve at the end of all this. So we're trying to build this column that you're seeing over here. So we need to have this title over here. This is why I said I need to style this column. I need it to look a certain way, a little bit appealing. So that is why we have that. So I am going to use styled components in order to style our title. I'll put it over here. There's our title. And then at the same time, we're going to have our list again. And I want to style our list as well so that it looks a certain way as well. So these are our styled components that you're seeing over here. I want our column to take in about 3 items as props. I want the title of the column, and I want those specific tasks that belong to this column, and I want the ID of the tasks of this particular column. So that is very important. So inside of here, we're going to remove this div, and then I'm going to put in the container that I created with styled components, like that. Beautiful. And inside of here, once again, I'm going to put in my title over here. So there is my title. And then once again, I am going to, I think I'm done with this. And then after that, I'm going to now put in my droppable. So this is the space at which all of my draggable items are going to be dropped. Well, not all of them, but the ones that you choose to be dropped in. Alright, so now let's use the droppable component. So we just say droppable, like that. And then just like that, we've created our droppable component inside of this column. It needs a droppable ID, so you cannot do without a droppable ID. So we're going to put your ID over here. And then inside of this, there's a callback function that we're going to use that provides like a bit of context about this particular column. So snapshots. I'll explain to you in a minute what provided and snapshot all represent. But first we need to create our task list over here. And there's our task list. Then inside of this task list, this is where we're going to provide essentially a list of all the tasks that have been assigned to us, right? So for the moment, because we don't have the task component provided yet, we're going to leave this blank, and we're just going to provide a comment and say provide your tasks. Okay, I think this is good. So this is where we're going to put our tasks over here. So this looks good so far. So I was going to explain what is snapshot and provide these 2 items over here. What do they mean? So in React-beautiful-dnd, snapshots are like objects that provide information about the current state of a droppable or a draggable component during a drag and drop operation. So a snapshot object is passed as an argument to the render function of a droppable component, which allows you to access information about the current drag state. And this is important because you can use this information to dynamically update the appearance of the component while it is being dragged and it's being dropped. In one of the, as you're going to see over here, we're going to use this information in order to change the appearance of our task as it is being dropped. Let me actually show you this because this is very important. So you can see as I drag this and I drop it on the other side, you can see that it changes color. Do you see that? So this is why we need those 2 items, those provided and the snapshots over there, because they provide us with this information so that we can dynamically change the appearance of our objects or the appearance of our items. All right. So we're done with this. How about we take a look at how it looks now? First, of course, what we need to do is just to put column over here. I'm going to put in a to-do column like this. Oh, sorry, I put it in the wrong place. Okay, I'm going to put it in a to-do column like this. You can see that I gave it a to-do title, and I gave it task. Of course, at the moment we don't have any tasks, and I gave it an ID. So you need to make sure that the ID that you give to the column is actually a string, otherwise it's going to complain. And after we're done, we need to go to app.jsx and actually get rid of everything in here and put in our Kanban board like that. Alright, so let's go back to our browser, and you can see this is our progress board, and we currently have a column, and this is the title that we had referenced to. So I usually do not like these scroll bars that you're seeing over here, but there is a possibility that we might have so much information that the user might need to scroll through that column. So we need to either way put in a scrollum. We need to activate scrolling, sorry. So, did I just say scrollum? We need to activate scrolling in order to allow the user to actually scroll through this. So I am gonna put in like maybe, let me just call it scroll.css, and I'm gonna put a couple of CSS stylings over here, and these stylings are going to allow us to be able to scroll. So you can see that these stylings are very specific to each browser, so that it can be implemented across all browsers. So now I need to go back to column and actually reference this class name that you're seeing over here. So I need to go, I believe it's container. I need to go to the container and declare a class name, and I'm going to call it column. And I believe they should be out by now, unless maybe we refresh. Okay, so I think we need to import it at the very top. And then scroll.css, like that. And as you can see, that we no longer have that bar that you see over there. But if there are many items in this column, the user will be able to scroll using either their mouse or using either their arrows inside of their keyboard, which I feel is aesthetically pleasing to me. You don't have to do that. That's not important. That's a little bit important to me, but you don't have to do it. So let's continue with our project, shall we? Right, so you could see that we've implemented that. Now we need to implement the task component over here. So this is our draggable component that we are implementing right now. So let's first start off by importing a couple of things. Let's start off by importing styled components and draggable at the very top, like that. So import these two important components, and now we need to style the container of our task. So I'm going to use styled components, of course, to do that. I also want to style the icon that I'm going to put at the very bottom. Remember, there's an avatar that I want to put at the bottom, as you can see over here. So I want that avatar to look a certain way or to be positioned in a certain way. And I also want to style the text that you see at the very center over here. I don't know as yet what I'm going to style it as, so I'm just going to put in a blank styling over there. And let's not forget our icon. I want it to appear rather at the end of our card, or of our task component, like you see over here. So I'm going to use flexbox in order to achieve that. All right, and there's one other thing that I want to do. I want to use the snapshot that I had described earlier in order to allow a change in our task whenever we drag it across. So I'm actually going to create a function at the very top over here that is going to be called BG color change. So it's going to check. So it's going to check, is this item being dragged, or is it draggable, or is it in the backlog? I also want, when it's in the backlog area, I want it to look a certain way, because you can see that in that thing that I showed you, we essentially have three states over here, or we have three columns over here. So we have three columns over here. So I want, whenever we're dragging this, I want it to have a light green color. Or I want it, if it's in the backlog, to look a certain way, and if it's at rest, to also look a certain way. So this is It's a little bit complicated, I understand, but if you're having any trouble understanding this, I don't mind actually writing it down because I didn't actually prepare to explain this. But it's just a way for us to control the color of our task as we move it across the Kanban board or when it is at rest. So we dynamically render it. Okay, so there are a couple of props that I want this component to take. First of all is the actual task, and I want it to take an index as well that is going to uniquely describe our task. And at the very top, of course, it's a draggable. This is a draggable, so we're just going to say draggable like that. And we're going to give it a draggable ID. That's very important. So I'm just going to say draggable ID. And the ID, it needs to be a string. So I need to make sure of that. So I'm going to use template literals in order to achieve this because it needs to be a string. If it's not a string, it's going to give you problems. So I'm just going to use the task.id over here. So I'm just going to use the task.id over there. And I'm going to give it a key of the same task ID. Task.id. And I'm going to give it an index over here. This is also important. React-beautiful-dnd requires that you must give it an index as well. Alright, I think that's about it. Now we need to go back to those to that callback function that I had explained earlier. Let me just move this up a bit so that you can see. So it's provided. Right, that's good. And then inside of here, sorry, actually this is supposed to be parentheses instead. And inside of here, I'm going to put in our container. Then I'm going to put in a couple of configurations to this container over here. These are very important to the package. And now we're going to be styling the inside of the container where we want everything to be. Right. So I'm going to first start off with what I want at the very top. So what I do want at the very top is that I want the ID to be at the very top. Alright, so there's our ID. It's going to be in small letters. And so I want it at the very top and I want it to the left of our container. And I also want, after that, I want to put in my title of the task or the to-do item. So I'm just going to put it over here. So this is where my task title is going to be. I want it at the very center of our card. And then what I want again is I want an avatar as well to be there. So I'm just going to put in the icon thingy over there. So this is our avatar. So our avatar is going to interchange. It's going to be picked out based on the ID. So let me just get rid of this because I was using this for debugging. Alright, so there is our task. At the very top we have our task ID, and then after that we have our task title over here. You can see this, and then here we have the icons. So we've now officially created our task, but there's just actually one more thing. And this is something that I got an error when I tried. This is the error that I got. So you need to put this provided.placeholder over there. Don't ask me. I have no idea why you had to put that, but I just realized that I got an error when I was doing this. So it's very important that you put this provided.placeholder. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. Okay. I think our task is officially done. I want to see how it looks. So I'm just going to go to app.jsx and I'm just going to put in my card over there like this. Let me just put it next to the Kanban board, right? So I'm just going to put it at the very top. So I'm just going to say card. Oh, sorry, not card, task. So it's not, card is a completely different component from end design. So I'm just going to say task. And we need a couple of things in here. So first of all, we need the task. The task needs to contain an ID. So I'm going to give it an ID of 123. And then it needs a title. of the task. So that title of the task might be make a progress board application. That's good. And then what else do we need to feed to this component? The index. So this is going to be apart from what we've provided here. And the index is going to be probably 1, I think. Alright, so I'm getting an error here, and I just want to call your attention to this error that I'm seeing over here. So it's saying the above error occurred in a private draggable component. So like I explained to you previously, with this draggable, droppable, and these 3 components that make up this package, you need to make sure that your draggable lands within is in the context of a droppable. So your draggable cannot exist outside of the droppable. So you need to make sure that it is inside of droppable, and you need to make sure that the droppable, or both the draggable and the droppable, are inside of the drag drop context. So we're getting this error because what we essentially did is that we positioned this task over here, which is a draggable, and we haven't put it inside of a droppable. So now we're getting an error. So we shouldn't be putting this in here. By the way, let me just get rid of this. We shouldn't be putting this in here, but instead maybe we should be putting it inside of a column so that we can really get like the value out of it. So I'm just going to put it inside of here. But first, of course, I need to import task at the very bottom. Let me pray that if I do this, it'll ask me to import it. There we go. That's fine. It's okay. But in the meantime, what I'm actually going to do is that I'm going to just, instead of returning this thing as a draggable, for testing purposes, I'm just going to return the container inside of this so that we can just see like aesthetically how this entire thing looks. So I'm just gonna go like put it over here as a container, and I'm just gonna get rid of all these things, these configurations that you're seeing over there. I'm also gonna have to get rid of this as well, because we just want to see how our task looks. So that's all we want to do. Okay, so this is how our task looks at the moment. So you can see that it's pretty much what we had wanted from the very beginning. We can sort of change the color over here so that it's not creamy, but of a different color. I'm actually thinking of changing it and have it look a certain way instead. All right, so I've changed the color of the board at, the color of the task at rest to a little bit of a bluish color, so that it just looks a little bit different. So yeah, let's get back to our application now. So we've seen how it looks, we're satisfied with how it looks. So now let's integrate all of these components together. But before we integrate these components together, we need information. We need these to-do lists. So what you can do, you can just like create your own JSON array of these items. But I really like working with the JSON placeholder because it just makes my job easy. They have fake data. They're not sponsoring this video, but they should. So I like working with JSON placeholder. So I'm just gonna go over here and just copy all their to-do list items. And I'm going to use them instead of creating my own, because I think that would take a bit of time. So what I'm actually going to do is that I'm going to create a use effect hook in my Kanban board. And I'm going to fill this completed and not completed states with those items from JSON placeholder, like this. So you can see that I'm using those items from JSON placeholder in order to set my states as such. And now the other thing that we need, the final component, the final nail in the coffin, is that we need an onDrag function. So you can see we can't do anything without an onDrag function. So I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call it handle drag end. Okay, so I'm going to call it handle drag end. And so what this function is going to do is just going to, this is what it's going to do actually. Let me just explain it a little bit better. So what it's going to do is that over here we have two lists. We have tasks that have been done and tasks that have not been done. So it's to do and done. So in order for this item to move over here, it needs to be eliminated from the to-do array and it needs to be pushed into the done array. So you can see this is how it actually works. As it moves to the other column, it is deleted so that it doesn't appear in the previous column. So that is essentially what this onDrag function is essentially going to do. So let's implement the onDrag function. So it's going to be an arrow function. It's going to put it, I think I should put it below this. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to check, we're going to actually extract some items or some information from the drag, the destination and the source and the draggable ID. So the destination is going to tell us where that task is being dragged to, and the source is going to tell us where that task or that item is being dragged from. So what we want to happen, first thing that we want to happen is that if the item has not been dragged, then we need nothing to happen. So if, for example, I drag this item and then I put it back, then I don't need anything to happen. So we're going to create like a sort of a closing function of if, I forgot what this is called. We're going to create an if statement and we're going to say if the source is the same as the destination, then we're done. We're not doing anything. We're done with everything. And then after that, what we need to do is that if the source and the destination is not the same, then the first thing that we need to do is that we need to remove from the source. We need to remove the item from the source array. And this is how we're gonna do it. Remember that each droppable item has an ID. So each of those columns have an ID. So what we're saying here is that if the droppable ID is 2, so if the item is coming from the done column, then we need to remove it from the done column. So this is where we remove things. And then after that, we need to actually get that item information because now we're going to a point whereby we're adding it to the next column. So first we need to acquire the actual item. So we need to get the item from whatever array it is from. So we're going to combine those arrays together in order to find the actual task. And what we're going to do next after this, we're just going to add the item to the destination column. So this is also easy. So, I forgot to mention that I have actually created 2 utility functions that allow me to find an item inside of a JSON array and another function that allows me to remove an item from a JSON array. So I'm just going to put them over here at the very bottom. So do not be confused by those functions that you see over there. They're not built-in functions. These are the functions that help me actually find an item, and this one helps me to remove an item from a JSON array. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to add an item to its destination column, and I'm going to do it as such. So I'm just going to utilize those 3 dot arrows that you see. Oh, not 3 dot arrows, but those what do you call them? And so we're going to add the items as such. And then after we've added the item to the existing column, we're just going to set the entire column to be a list of existing items in the new task that we're adding. And then we're done. That's it. That's all we need to do in the OnDragEnd function. And for some reason it's grayed out, so that means it's not being called appropriately. So I think what I could have done, or I think I've done, is I didn't name it properly. So I'm just going to copy it and put it over here, and it should not be grayed out anymore. So I think we're done with our Kanban board. So we just need to make sure that everything is okay and everything works as it should. Actually, not so fast. The last thing that we need to do is actually implement our columns, because we haven't put in all of our droppable items. We've just put in this to-do column that you're seeing over here, but we actually need to put in the done column and the backlog column. So I'm not going to do much in the backlog column, but I'm going to create another tutorial that is going to allow you to comprehensively create this application, because this is just a basic level. So I think this should be it. Now we can check in with our, but let's just make sure that everything is good. I believe in just like checking. There it is. Okay, so remember when we wanted to like show the aesthetics of our tasks, we actually commented out this draggable item in order to show us what the UI looks like. So we need to actually get rid of this return statement that you're seeing over here, and we need to enable this return statement over here because that's the one that we're actually going to be using. So let's see if I can highlight it properly without my mouse running away from me. Come back to me. All right, so there we go. So that is good. And so the other thing that we actually need to do that we've forgotten to do is actually we need to make this a list. So this needs to be a list of tasks because we need it to be in a sort of like a row type of thing. So sorry, in a column-like fashion. So we need to make a list of these tasks instead of putting them like this. We need to dynamically render them. So remember that our column actually receives three props, sorry, and one of the props is the task variable or the task constant. So we need to utilize that. So we need to utilize that, and we need to say task.map, and then we're just going to say task index. Actually, we need to put this in parentheses like that, and we need to create an arrow function in here. Oh, this is a callback function. And then inside of there, we're going to put in our task component that is going to be essentially made up of these, that's our task component over there. It's going to take in, first of all, we need a key, and then it's going to take in the index, and then it's going to take in the task. And I think that is it for our column. That's all that we need to do, unless there's anything else. And then I think this will be the final. We need to put in the Kanban board over here. And then we need to get rid of this. So this is essentially how a package should look after a couple of wrestling this. I'm rethinking, this color once again because it just doesn't, like, it sort of like blends in with the background and it doesn't need to blend in that much. It's not that visible, so maybe we need to create like some sort of like a border or a shadow in order to make it pop out more. But if you create it on your own, you'll be able to see it much better. So you can see that if I drag this item across this, it is draggable and it automatically lands in the done board or in the done column. And if I do the same to this one as well, I drag it over here, you can see that's number 4, I'm able to drag it across the other column properly. So this is essentially how you make a simple progress board using React-beautiful-dnd. I have maybe a warning that this particular package is very, I don't know if I could say it's memory intensive, but when you use it, you need to be careful of how much you use it in terms of the performance of your application, because it takes a lot from your application in order to render this entire thing. I would advise that if you have the ability, you just like create your entire thing from scratch, but most of all, just be careful how you use it, because after using it many times, I've noticed that it can be a little bit of a drag in the performance of your application. So be careful when you use it. But other than that, it's a very, very beautiful project to create or get into, and you can do so many things with it. So I took a minute to just create like a bit of a shadow effect because it was just really bothering me. So you can see it's a little bit better than it was before. So yeah, so thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, then please do subscribe. I have plenty of videos that really help you navigate your way into the web development life or lifestyle. So if you've enjoyed this video and if you've learned something new, then please do subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate it a lot. If you have any comments, if you're confused about something, please leave them in the comment section. As you can see with my other previous videos, I always reply to whoever needs my answers or needs me to say something on something. But either way, I do appreciate your comments very much. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.